Steam is going absolutely nuts right now, and I've found not 5, not 10, but 20 insane deals with discounts up to 95% off. Let's start with Control Ultimate Edition with an insane 90% off for just $1.29, which honestly feels kind of ridiculous for what you're getting. This is one of those games where the atmosphere does most of the talking. You're thrown into this strange, brutalist building that's constantly shifting, and the combat leans heavily into telekinesis rather than traditional shooting. Throwing desks, ripping chunks of concrete off the walls, floating through fights, it all feels incredibly tactile. It's also one of those games people still reference when talking about modern single-player experiences. The one thing to keep in mind is that the story can feel intentionally vague, almost confusing at times. If you like clear answers, it might frustrate you. But if you're into mystery and mood, this price makes it a no-brainer. Then we got Sleeping Dogs Definitive Edition, down 85% to $1.57. This is one of those games that never really got the spotlight it deserved, but everyone who played it still talks about it. At its core, it's an open-world crime game, but instead of focusing on guns, it leans more into hand-to-hand combat inspired by martial arts films. The city feels alive, the undercover cop story actually sticks with you, and the melee combat still feels satisfying even today. That said, it is an older game, and you'll notice it in things like driving physics and some stiff animations. Still, for this price, it's one of the strongest hidden classics you can grab. Then there's Alan Wake, the classic game that's absolute must-play, going for 69 cents at 90% off, which is honestly wild considering how important this game became over time. This one is all about slow burn tension. You're not running and gunning, you're managing light, positioning yourself carefully, and trying not to panic when things go wrong. It feels more like an interactive thriller than a traditional action game, and that's exactly why people still recommend it years later. The combat can feel repetitive after a while, but if you enjoy story-driven games with a strong atmosphere, this is an easy recommendation at less than $1. After that, we've got Just Cause 3, one of my favorites, discounted 85% to $1. And this one is pure mayhem in the best way possible. The entire game is built around freedom, grappling, wingsuiting, blowing up military bases in ridiculous ways, and just seeing how creative you can get with destruction. There's not much subtlety here, and the story is mostly an excuse to keep things moving, but that's kind of the point. One thing worth mentioning though, performance can be inconsistent, especially on lower-end systems, and the open world can feel repetitive if you play for long stretches. Still, for $1, it's hard to complain about this much sandbox fun. Then we got Injustice 2, sitting at 90% off for $5. This is easily one of the most polished superhero fighting games out there. Even if you're not deep into fighting games, the presentation, character animations, and story mode make it approachable. It's the kind of game where casual players can have fun, but competitive players still have a lot to dig into. The downside is that some of the progression systems lean a bit too much into grindy gear mechanics, which not everyone loves. But at this price, you're getting a very solid, feature-rich fighting game with a lot of content. Then we have Warhammer Vermintide 2, currently 80% off at $3. And this is one of those games that quietly built a very loyal player base. At its core, it's a co-op-focused melee combat game where teamwork matters more than raw shooting skill. Every swing has weight, every enemy wave feels overwhelming, and when things click with a good team, it's incredibly satisfying. It's especially popular among players who enjoy skill-based combat rather than just spraying bullets. Next is Lego Batman the video game, down 85% to $2.50, and this one is pure comfort gaming. It's simple, charming, and doesn't try to be anything more than a fun, lighthearted experience. The levels are built around puzzles, light combat, and co-op play that's easy to jump into with anyone. It's not trying to challenge you, and that's kind of the appeal. That said, it is an older Lego title, so the mechanics feel more basic compared to newer entries in the series. Still, it holds up surprisingly well, especially if you're playing it casually or with someone else. Then there's Children of Morta, sitting at 85% off for $1.27, which is an absolute steal for what it offers. This is a roguelike that focuses heavily on family and storytelling, something you don't see too often in the genre. Each character plays differently, and switching between them keeps the experience fresh. The pixel art is gorgeous, and the narration gives the whole game a very personal feel. The main thing to know going in is that runs can feel punishing early on, and progress isn't always immediate. But if you enjoy slow, meaningful progression, this game really sticks with you. After that, we've got Call of Juarez Gunslinger, one-of-a-kind game that hasn't been recreated yet. It's currently 80% off at $3, and this one has aged far better than most shooters from its time. It's short, tightly designed, and focuses on fast gunplay rather than realism. The narrator constantly bends the story as you play, changing environments mid-fight, which gives it a unique rhythm. It's not a long game, and once it's over, there isn't a massive reason to return unless you're chasing higher scores. Still, it's one of those experiences that feels very confident in what it's trying to be. And then there's Saints Row 4 Re-Elected, discounted 85% to $2.24, which completely throws realism out the window. Instead of pretending to be grounded, it leans fully into absurd superpowers, over-the-top weapons, and ridiculous missions. For some players, this is where the series peaked because it stopped taking itself seriously. For others, it might feel like it went too far and lost the street-level identity of earlier games. But if you're in the mood for something that doesn't care about logic and just wants to be fun, this price makes it very hard to ignore. Then we have Shadow Tactics Blades of the Shogun, going for 90% off at $2. And this is one of those games that feels carefully crafted from start to finish. It's a real-time stealth tactics game where patience matters more than reflexes. You're controlling multiple characters, each with their own abilities, and success comes from planning rather than improvising. It's especially loved by players who enjoy methodical gameplay and problem-solving. The only real downside is that it demands focus. It's not something you casually half-play while multitasking, and that can turn some people away. Next is Batman Arkham City Game of the Year Edition, currently 80% off at $4. And this is often the game people point to when talking about the peak of superhero games. The combat still feels smooth, the open world is dense without being overwhelming, and the story treats its characters with a surprising amount of respect. Even years later, it's regularly recommended to newcomers. It is still one of those "you should play this at least once" games. Then there's Broforce, discounted 80% to $1.39. And this one is just chaotic fun. It's a side-scrolling action game built around exaggerated action movie tropes, destructible environments, and fast restarts. Every character feels overpowered in a different way, which keeps things unpredictable. It's especially popular in local co-op settings where things spiral out of control in seconds. Still, it's a great pick if you want something fast and loud. After that, we've got Thief Simulator, sitting at 90%